Scotsman, and this is Whatever Comes Next. It's the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, I am delighted to be joined by Richard Johnson, vocalist, guitarist, songwriter for Drugs of Faith, not to mention also being vocalist or one of the vocalists for Agoraphobic Nosebleed, and many other projects, many other appearances. But if you're looking at the runtime for this episode and thinking, wow, they really went on a bit, I honestly really did not intend for this interview to run longer than about 30 minutes. But it just went off on one. And I didn't even manage to get into talking with Richard about some of his other projects. So the main thing that we're here to talk about is the fact that Drugs of Faith are back with their first studio album in over 10 years, Asymmetrical, which I've been enjoying a lot. It is powerful, it's furious, it's like an explosion, or it's like multiple explosions. Really great playing. And so that's going to be coming out in just a few days, this Friday, in fact, on Selfmadegod Records and Malokul, on Selfmadegod and Malokul. I will put all links in the description. You can get the album on CD, you can get it digitally. Something we talked about as well was the way that Richard likes to have PDF versions of lyrics, which are available to download when you buy digital copies, which I thought was nice. And we talk about some of these aspects of, different, the sort of value of different print media, and lots of other things as well. As I say, I had really firmly in mind, okay, we're just going to stick to the projects. We're going to talk about some of the history. Once we started talking about Napalm Death and Killing Joke, then we just kind of went off and, shared our mutual appreciation of various music. It was a great pleasure. We even got to talk about my favorite anonymous Parisian anarchists, Non-Serviam, who Richard worked with on one of their previous records. Yeah, we talked about interviewing. We talked about his blog, his music blog, Disposable Underground. Yeah, we talked about typing. We talked about interviewing. It was great. I really, really enjoyed it. And I hope that he enjoyed it too. And I hope that you will enjoy it. And I'm sick. I'm going to shut up, edit this podcast, and upload it, hopefully for your pleasure. I'll put all links in the description of where you can check Richard out and all his various different projects, where you can buy the album from. I thoroughly recommend that you go check it out. If you like grindcore, if you like grind and roll, as the band presents themselves as purveyors of, and just, if you like good, energetic, crushing music in general, then I think there are definitely many things to enjoy here. You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osmond Sounds. You can check out what I'm doing musically at tomosmondsounds.com. And I'm going to play a track from Asymmetrical at the end of this interview with a little clip before then. And I think I can now say, Richard Johnson of Drugs of Faith, Agoraphobic Nosebleed. And, oh yes, also, by the way, I should mention, sometimes known as Grindfather, which we get into as well. But whether or not he has ever been responsible for any severed horses' heads appearing in people's beds is yet to be confirmed. Richard Grindfather Johnson, take it away. Hello, Richard.
How you doing?
Good to meet you, Tom.
Hey, and we met on social media earlier, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. I guess we did. And I think we're not so far apart in our lines of work. Are you still an editor?
No, I work at this nonprofit, so I don't do anything with writing there.
Okay.
It's a bit of project management / administrative work.
Yeah. And do you still kind of do some freelance writing and editing, or do you not do that anymore?
I've got this full-time job, so I don't I don't try to make ends meet with freelancing.
Yeah.
So what happened is I was doing that during the lockdowns. I was laid off before the lockdowns started,
Mm.
and then I managed to put a few different things together. But it didn't quite all add up to me paying the bills. So I
Yeah.
eventually found a full-time job,
Okay.
which is kind of I kind of miss it because it was kind of fun having some freedom of the schedule, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is freelance. So like I'm an English teacher for non-native speakers, and then I also
Mhm.
do a bit of writing and editing on the side. And yeah, the freedom and the flexibility is great, but the the job security is lacking.
Right.
So we are, for the main part, I mean, there's all kinds of interesting history of yours that I want to get into, but we're for the main part here to talk about Asymmetrical, your latest record with Drugs of Faith, your third full-length record, your first album in 14 years, is it, with the band?
Um, when did
Or
Corona
11?
come out? I guess it was 14 years ago.
And I was wondering, I mean, this is probably a stupid question to start with, but would you classify the album as an anti-war record, or it's not sort of as simple as that?
The first song on the record has anti-war lyrics, and there's some, drones talks about, the tactics of war. There's a bit of that, but I wouldn't say that it's a theme for the whole record. No.
Yeah. And I was kind of thinking, like, going back to your debut release, you've got the image of George W. Bush on the
Yeah.
cover. So I feel like that. I mean, I think you've sort of said that as well, that, like political commentary is a part of the band. I was kind of wondering if the break indicates that you feel like the political landscape wasn't quite so desperate in between the last record and this one, or were there other factors that were responsible for that?
We were writing political lyrics that just talked about different things. On our last 7 inch, I've got a song about the Israeli-Palestine conflict,
Mm.
just to give one example. We did a track for an anti-Trump comp
Yeah.
before that, you know. So so griping about political issues and social issues is something that we keep coming back to.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, thinking about the playing on the record, I don't know at this stage if any of these songs are particularly challenging for you to play. I was thinking particularly with The Void, but maybe
Mhm.
that's more for your drummer rather than you.
Ah, uh, it- we appreciate Ethan's drumming. Some of the stuff has a lot of I guess what do you call them? Drum notes, like the beats.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on in some of those songs, which is great. It's the technical drummer. We actually haven't added that. We haven't played it live yet. But as
Okay.
we play more songs, as when the record comes out, that's one that we might pull out.
Yeah.
I try not to, that song I mentioned that we did the last video for. That's got a little bit of riffing that requires a bit of chops. I mean, for me anyway. I
Hmm.
mean, there's guitar players I know that would be able to play it no problem. You know, I'm not that much of a shredder.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, to me, the kind of music that you're playing is fairly extreme. It's not like, obviously, it's not dream theater. It's not like incredibly
Yeah.
technical, but it's still, to me, it seems quite difficult. So I'm always kind of interested talking to musicians about like how difficult they consider their music to be. I mean, I guess you've been playing, kind of like a mixture of hardcore and grindcore and metal for a long time at this point. So I don't know for you how you feel kind of like about the evolution of your playing over time. Do you still find that you're writing stuff where you're kind of like pushing the limits of what you can do?
I'm inspired when I think about this quote in Decibel magazine. They were inducting Heartwork, into the Decibel Hall of Fame.
Mm.
And something the band said is in there somewhere was they were playing to the limits of their ability. And that's great. And I don't know how often uh, we've, I don't think we've ever consciously tried to do that. I don't consciously try to write something on guitar that I'm, going like this, sort of fighting with the strings, trying to play it because I just want to have this visceral experience when I'm playing.
Yeah.
It's more like, is that an awesome riff when you put it together with the drums and the bass? Is it cool? We're more interested in that, I think.
Do you tend to like come up with the tunes all together, or do you more sort of like construct songs on your own first and then put them together with the rest of the band?
There's been times when I've put a song together, well, in a basic kind of a way.
Hmm.
Here's a riff, here's another riff. You go back and play this one. There's a thing at the end, so it's kind of a general outline, and I'll have an idea of how the riffs might go.
Hmm.
And then Ethan and I'll get together and we'll start playing it. When the guitar player brings a drummer a riff, the drummer might say, "What kind of beat do you want on this?"
Yeah.
And then you say, I want double bass like bow thrower or something. Or you go, I want a blast beat or I want a slayer, whatever.
Yeah.
You talk in the shorthand. Or you might just say, I don't know. I don't know. And then you play it 20 times. You just keep playing it over and over until the drummer comes up with something that they like.
Yep.
So sometimes I have things more fleshed out and then we talk about it because we're really interested in making sure we want the songs to flow well. You know,
Hmm.
so we might end up saying, oh, we talk about should we play this 4 times or 6 times? Should we go back and play that again? Maybe that riff shouldn't go at the beginning, all that sort of thing. Once in a while, Ethan will have a suggestion about a riff. And actually, in The Void, he did that because he goes, oh, there's something about that riff I don't like. And we had to talk about it for a long time until I got what he was saying and I changed it.
Yeah.
And then Ivan will come up with bass parts, and then I'll try to find places where we can fit them in. So there's some of that on Asymmetrical, and he might have a suggestion about arrangement here and there.
Yeah. It's funny, like I kind of like came to even punk kind of late. Like I didn't start out listening to punk music. I sort of the first stuff that I really liked musically when I was a kid was like pop music. And
Hmm.
then I sort of like got into like I guess kind of like alternative rock or Brit pop because I was in the UK when I was a kid, and then I got into grunge, and then I gradually got into metal. And like I remember the first time when I ever listened to Pantera, I think it was the Great Southern Trendkill, and I was like, oh Jesus, this is like noise. I can't cope with this. And
Uh-huh.
then once I'd got over that, then it's like I started listening to Napalm Death, for example, and it was like, right, well, there's some really cool riffs in here, but all this like crazy chaotic stuff is a bit too much to deal with. Like
Yeah.
but over time, it's kind of interesting. Like when I listen to Asymmetrical now, I really love the variety and I love the different riffing and I love all the different rhythms that are going on. Like I feel like I've kind of got a musical understanding that I can appreciate it, but it took me a while to get there. So I kind of wonder from your point of view, you've like I said, you've been playing music in this sort of world for quite a long time. How did you first get into grindcore or hardcore or any of these styles of music? Like, were you on board really early? I mean, I don't know, maybe grindcore wasn't really a thing that existed when you were a kid.
I compared to some people I know, I got into extreme music, metal and hardcore and things. I would say kind of late,
Mm-hmm.
the late 80s.
Mm.
And I was lucky enough to have some people, let's say in school or people I would meet that would introduce me to bands and they would make recommendations. I can remember some specific moments where somebody said, you should get this record and you should get this record. And they were right, you know? Um, so when I got into it, and it helped that I had a zine, you know?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, the Disposable Underground.
Right, because you're lucky to get into tape trade. Well, you don't have to have a zine to get into tape trading. You can just read zines and get into all that back then, the late 80s and the early 90s when I was doing that. So that helped expose me to a lot of things. And when you're young, so did you get this when you finally got into that stuff that you want to find the next thing that's extreme and the next thing that's more extreme than that?
100%. Yep.
Yeah, so I went through that whole thing. So you hear it was the same thing with me at first. When I first heard metal, I thought it was stupid and I didn't get it. And then, something happened back here maybe where I felt like I was somewhere in my life where I wanted that, you know, that kind of release.
Yep.
And I mean, people might have it in different ways. I guess it goes hand in hand, watching the next craziest horror movie and the next craziest horror movie after that, and you get into gore and all that thing. It's all that kind of stuff. Of course, what's the band you think of immediately when you think about that crossover? Cannibal Corpse.
Yep.
So I think it was all pretty normal with me. I got my first guitar, started playing with people. You start out with covers.
Mm.
Eventually realize that maybe you're inspired to write something, your first riff. Yeah, and the whole thing just builds from there. So I heard a lot of stuff through working on zines, going to shows, get recommendations from people. All very natural, I think.
Yeah. And was Enemy Soil the first band that you recorded with?
Yeah.
And were you originally the bass player, or am I thinking of Agoraphobic Nosebleed?
With Agoraphobic Nosebleed, I played some bass on Frozen Corpse Soaked with Dope, but I also sang on it.
Hmm.
The bass playing was actually secondary.
Okay.
So Mason and I started Enemy Soil, and he was playing bass, and I was playing guitar, and I had a drum machine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
pretty classic.
I was listening to some of the early recordings. I was like, "Oh, that low end is tasty."
Yeah,
Like I bet that was pretty cool when you were playing that live.
you start out with those songs at the beginning are pretty primitive. Some of
Hmm.
them. It's funny. You go back and listen to. I went back when Relapse did the reissue of Casualties of Progress. It was the 7-inch that they put on CD with bonus. We came up with bonus tracks to give them. I remember thinking how primitive it sounded. You know, but da na 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 na. You know, that's great.
Yeah, but like I was talking to someone about this recently. Like if you go back and listen to Big Black,
Uh-huh.
in a sense, what they were using was quite basic,
Hmm.
but it still sounds powerful to this day, despite, or through the limitations of what they were using.
Well, maybe uh, limitations that they might have enforced upon themselves. I don't know. Sparks creativity because you have to work with just what you're giving yourself
Yep.
or what you're forced to work with.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, and execution is important too. It doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, I love this record by Rainbow Grave, and I
Mm.
think every song only has one idea in it, and they did a whole record like that, but it's just completely brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, sometimes you don't need to overcomplicate things.
Right.
And going back to the latest record, like I enjoy the construction of the songs, but I also think it sounds really cool. And so I was looking into who you got recording it, and it's funny because I hadn't really thought about Kevin Bernstein before, and I
Hmm.
realized you've worked with him for quite a while.
Hmm.
And then I also realized that he's done a whole bunch of Full of Hell records, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
He's also done a band which I was just tonight writing a little piece on called Pyramid Mass. I don't know
Hmm.
if you know them.
No.
And then also, I don't know if you know this record, but I realized like, oh yeah, he recorded this album that I've got by Malovich. I mean, I know he's done a million different things, but I was like, all right, I guess I know this guy better than I
Uh-huh.
thought I did. So
Malovich, yeah.
how did you come to start working with him? Were you already friends before then?
Yeah, we knew each other from playing shows, because he was in bands. And how did that happen the first time? He might have recommended that we try him out, try recording with him. I actually don't remember. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It started out with when we first recorded with him, or maybe it was maybe was that the first time we recorded with him? I don't know. Anyway, he had a recording set up in his basement,
Mm.
and then he got a real studio, and then he moved into another one. And we kept going back to him because we liked the results and our, you know, when I say working relationship, us going and recording with him, I don't mean to say that we're not friends and we don't joke around a lot and he gives us shit when we're recording. Uh, but that kept getting better. We come back and we when I started getting more interested in getting the sound that we ended up with on Asymmetrical, that I tried, I guess a few records ago, I started thinking about trying to get something like that. I would tell him, I'm kind of thinking about it. It kind of should be like this with the guitar and the bass. I think the last time we went in there, I didn't have to say anything because you knew what I was going to say.
Yeah. And so like for how long has he had the same recording studio? How familiar are you with the space that you recorded the latest album in?
The space he's got now, how many we recorded there, maybe uh, once or twice before.
Okay.
When we did Corroded and Architectural Failures, at least it was at another studio he had, and he was in there for years too.
Yeah.
He recorded Full of Hell at his previous place too. This
And
is all in
how
the same town, in Baltimore. So a
yeah.
Baltimore-based producer.
And how big of an impact does it make for you? Like if you think about the different projects and the different recordings that you've done over the years, like how big an impact do you think the recording spaces have?
Well, he's interested in getting a good room sound for the drums. If a band is interested in that. So uh, the, the space he's got now and the one he had before had this room that he had the drum set up in, which was good, you know. And I remember him trying to blend the mics that are sort of just trying to get the cymbals, but also sort of get the whole drum set.
Mm.
Try to blend that in with all the mics that are actually on each individual drum. I don't know all the engineering ins and outs. That's why I'm just kind of waving my arms and trying to talk about it.
I mean, I kind of get the impression in general that when it comes to recording a band, like the drums are usually going to be the most labor intensive part because you have so many different pieces. Like I'm sort of thinking of, the legends of going back to the early Floridian death metal albums, and it's like no one really knew how to produce death metal, and then Scott Burns came along who didn't have a metal background, and he found a way to actually
Hmm.
make this stuff sound really cool. So I guess faster playing with heavier drums is going to add a lot of challenges when it comes to producing it in a way that's going to sound impactful.
Yeah, it's interesting reading about that sort of thing. For example, in Scott Burns's book, and then Jason Netherton's book, when you hear about these bands, they're still trying to figure out how to play death metal because it was so new. Like with bands like, you know, Obituary when they were still Executioner or whatever. And there's many examples of that. And they're trying to tell somebody who's never heard death metal what they want. And that person might be perfectly capable of recording a band, but getting the double bass or recording the vocals right is something that they didn't understand. And then
Yeah.
maybe they weren't interested in either because they thought it was stupid. Because you'd read about bands who get terrible recordings because the engineer just wasn't interested.
Yeah, they didn't respect the kind of thing that they were going for.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of funny, like in the realms of extreme music and in a lot of metal, it's like if you take a step back from it, it can seem incredible. A lot of it can seem incredibly silly in some ways.
Yeah.
I feel like for a lot of people, as soon as you get into any kind of extreme vocals, a lot of people will just switch off and go like, no, I can't do that.
It's been great that there's such a self-deprecating sense of humor in metal. I mean, the more extreme.
Yes.
the funnier it is. And if people recognize that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's good when things are a little bit tongue in cheek and bands
Yeah.
aren't taking themselves too seriously.
Um, I guess it's funnier when the bands take themselves too seriously because the memes on social media are better. But you know, it's good. It's good to just have a laugh about it, but then be able to put out good records and not be a joke band either.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I guess it's a bit of a balance.
Yeah.
Um, when did you become Grindfather?
So uh, I was in this band, and the way I remember it is, and actually I was talking to uh, one of the actually he this guy that played on one of our demos that Kevin recorded. He was there, and he thinks it happened differently. But anyway, somebody said something, and I said, "Oh, we'll make them an offer they can't refuse." And somebody says, "Oh, you're what is that? You're like the Grindfather or something." And everybody laughed, and that was the end of it. And then we had a show, and everybody was saying it. And to me, and that was it. You
That's
know,
pretty cool. As
it
far
was
as the
off to the
creation of
races,
nicknames go, that's I like it because I noticed that
right?
you're credited on a few Pig Destroyer records as Grindfather. So I was kind of wondering if they'd come up with it or if you're referred to as that elsewhere. So I guess the latter
Oh, I mean, people I've never met say that to me. You know, it's funny.
for sure.
I mean, I had a joke with Scott, speaking of Pig Destroyer, Scott Hall one time about who was more old school based on the shows that we've been to, and he won. And because he beat me with some show that was ridiculously old school.
Yeah.
And what magazine was that? Revolver? They had a list of the top 10 grindcore records, and he had played on three of them or something. And
Not
he
bad.
goes, "Who's the grindfather now?" Yeah.
Oh, and I was wondering, was it through playing in Agoraphobic Nosebleed with him that you met the Pig Destroyer guys?
I had sung on a Agoraphobic Nosebleed 7-inch before Big Destroyer started.
Hmm.
And JR and I were in Enemy Soil together.
Oh, I see.
And Brian was in Enemy Soil before he was in Big Destroyer.
So you saw Pig Destroyer from their earliest inception.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was at their first show. Well, JR and I used to live in the same town.
Yeah. Yeah, I regret the fact that I've never had the chance to see Pig Destroyer live.
Hmm. Well, they do a lot of international touring, but you know, like I got a taste of that when there was this year that Garfield with Nosebleed played a lot, and we would just go somewhere and play and come back. Like one show. So Pig Destroyer does a lot of that,
Yeah.
but I guess they haven't come to your area yet.
I mean, there, just because I haven't seen a band doesn't mean that I never had the opportunity. Sometimes I passed up on them. I
Yeah,
still, it still nags at me that I had one opportunity to see Today Is the Day in about 2011, and I was like, it's all right. And now, like 14 years later, I'm like, if I never get to see Today Is the Day, I'm gonna kick myself forever.
yeah, and you go,
I had that
yeah.
chance.
I've seen Sepultura plenty of times, but they did this thing where they did the 30th anniversary of Sepultura.
Mm.
They had a backdrop, the 30th anniversary backdrop, something like that. And they played this place in Baltimore. And it's the kind of place where you can get right up to the stage, so there isn't a barrier, you know, and you could watch them up close. And I didn't go, and I wish I had.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I have to be fair to myself. There are a lot of cool shows that I've been to that I did take the opportunity for, so you can't necessarily catch them all. But speaking of doing shows, one of the things I was curious about, like for you and the different bands you've had, whether Drugs of Faith or otherwise, like how actively have you been involved in the process of booking shows and that side of things?
I try to book a show once in a while, but most of the shows we played, someone asks us.
Right, okay. And what about like in terms of touring? Or has it more been like isolated shows?
It's mostly isolated shows. We went to Europe, and the guy that runs our record label booked it. He booked half of it, and the driver he hired for us booked the other half. Which was interesting because that made half the shows were like this and half the shows were like that, because of their contacts were totally different.
Yeah.
And we did a tour with Antigama one time they came to the States. So we booked that. And we've done a weekend shows here and there. So we've tried to get those.
Yeah. What was your experience like, or what has your experience been like playing outside of the States?
Oh, it's great. It's just a show's a show, but it's just a different experience.
Mm.
There's the cliche you must hear from people in the States where when they go to Europe and they'll notice that artists are treated better there because they take it more seriously. They'll offer you a place to stay. If you stay the night in the club, they might feed you in the morning
Yeah.
because they just think it's important to support the arts, even if it's just, grindcore or something. So when first time we went to Europe, we really noticed that we're really impressed by it. And it's just a different atmosphere being around different people, you know?
Yeah. And talking about Europe, this is a bit of a tenuous segue, but
Yeah.
there's a band, a French band that I'm a big fan of, an anonymous French band, who I think possibly you made a guest appearance for. Are you on this?
Oh, the non-Serviam record? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I discovered them because, their previous record got reviewed in something. And the person reviewing it was going, "You have to get this right now," you know? And I did, and it was great. And we got in touch somehow, and they asked if I would sing on their record.
Yeah. Void and Moon, the anonymous Void and Moon. I've spoken to them a number of times, but only ever via
Uh-huh.
email, So
Yeah.
yeah, I really love them. Like I didn't know them right from the very beginning, but I've followed them for the past few years, and I just find them really fascinating and unusual and creative. And they have metal elements, they have noise elements, they have it's like
Black metal.
avant-garde, black metal, sometimes it's
Yeah.
kind of ambient. I just love the sort of creativity without limits. So yeah, I hope they
Oh,
keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah, it's great.
So you mentioned before about your label. I noticed that the latest record's coming out on Selfmadegod Records, who are Polish. I know them,
Yep.
and then the other one was Malokul. Is that right? Is that
Right.
how I say that? And they're a
Yeah.
DC based label.
Right. So the bass player for Genocide Pact,
No, I don't think so.
they've got three records on, or is it two? And then one's on another label on Relapse.
Hmm.
And so the bass player, that's his label.
Right. Okay. So when you say your label, are you referring to Self-Made God or Malakal?
Oh, well, so we're on Self-Made God. And Carol from Self-Made God, he's got a bunch of bands that he releases. One of the main ones is Antigama.
Okay.
She's just doing the CD
Hmm.
and and then Malakul is doing the LP.
Right. Okay. So okay, so it's coming out on CD and on vinyl as
And
well.
then it's on streaming. Yeah.
The old streaming. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So, I guess we're both of a time, like you were talking about tape trading before, that we knew music before streaming existed. So
Hmm.
I understand that there are positives in terms of the opportunities for people to get access to music, but I also can see there are a lot of potential negatives in terms of money being siphoned away from artists. Although having said that, like I know, the history books are filled with accounts of musicians getting screwed over by record labels in the past. So maybe things haven't really changed that much at the end of the day. But how do you see things in terms of the impact that streaming services have had on people like yourself making music?
It's the same thing, It's important to have a good deal if you're on a record label and you think you're going to get a lot of downloads and streams and all that to get a good split. So that hasn't changed. Most people want to hear a record before they throw down for it.
Yep.
It's okay with me if they want to download it. If they stream it, that's okay too. Um, some people will just listen to it online. If the band comes around and they like the band enough, they'll go ahead and buy some merch, maybe buy a t-shirt, actually get the record. You know, Maybe they won't go to the trouble of ordering it in the mail. Oh, that's how it is. I don't really. There's a whole argument about how maybe people aren't being as conscious about consuming music if you're just listening to it on Spotify or something. You have to do a little digging in order to read the lyrics if you're going to read them. So what we do with the records that we put on our Bandcamp is I make a PDF of the booklet. So if you buy the record, the PDF will come with it. Yeah, I mean, I'm referring to if you buy the download.
Yeah.
So then you can open up the PDF and you got the cover, you can flip through it and read the lyrics that way and of the back cover.
Yeah, that's cool. Because that's actually something that used to sort of irk me sometimes with CDs when you I don't know why this particular one comes to my mind, but I remember I had a CD of whatever the Lou Reed album was before Berlin, the one, whatever that one was. And it was obviously, the album came out in the early 70s and I got this CD and it just had the cover and that was it. And I thought, oh, this is kind of shit. It's give me something. If I'm going to have the physical thing, I want to have at least give me some lyrics or whatever else. I understand it costs more if you're mass producing something, but yeah, I like that. Even with a digital download, it's to have something that is a bit more tangible than just the streaming digital files in the ether.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought a Meat Beat Manifesto record the other day, and it was this record where they go, it's interesting. The booklet, the cover is on the front and the back of the booklet. And then you open the booklet up and it's just got the label logo on it. And then when you look on the back, in the back, it has all the info. There's the track listing. The back in the jewel case, I mean.
Yeah.
And then it's got an explanation. There's a whole paragraph explaining what this record is. It turns out it's a compilation. And then, it says this track is from this compilation and this track is a B-side, and so it's a little weird that it's set up that way. I mean, maybe the LP looks like that, if there is one. It's just got the cover and the back cover, and there's no insert. So
yeah,
they just mirrored it. I don't know.
Yeah, curious. I do find sometimes, I do some research for another podcast, and so different bands.
How many podcasts do you have?
2.
Okay.
I do some research for this other podcast. I don't present it, but sometimes I do interviews for it. But they have basically the premise is they'll have a different band and the two guys that present it, they'll listen to all the different records the band has and they'll talk about them.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the stuff that they do, the kind of little network of people that are really into the show tend to be people that like a lot of noise rock, for example, hardcore, post-hardcore, a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, they've done an episode on the Spice Girls, they did an episode on ELO, but a lot of the stuff they kind of come back to is more in that kind of alternative rock, noise rock, hardcore territory. And I remember there was a band, I think it was Hammerhead, that they had an episode on. And I realized when I was trying to find information about some of the albums, it was like you couldn't get any information on one or two records about like who actually played on it. And it wasn't
Mm.
just a thing about like not having it online. Like I actually managed to find the sleeves for the albums. And there was one of them where it's just like there just wasn't anything there. So it was sort of a mystery. Like it was fascinating in a way, but it was also a bit frustrating of like, I want to know. I want to know who was involved in this. It's like there's no way of finding out. So I mean, the mystery can be cool sometimes, but it's also nice to have information.
It's amazing how much information there is out there, though, at the same time. Um, I've got this project. Well, I'm actually done with this project that I've been working on for several years with my zine, my blog that we mentioned. I took in content from each issue of my zine and I put it onto my blog. And my zine started out cut and paste,
Mm.
and I had scans of it, and I pumped them into optical character recognition websites to get the text of it. And I would put up on my blog all these reviews of these demos, and I would do searches on the demos, and there a lot of those demos people, like they're on Discogs.
Yeah.
Some like a French death metal band from 1992. Somebody had the tape and they scanned it and they put it on Discogs, and it just blows my mind, you know.
Yeah.
So I put the little thumbnail of the demo with the
Yeah.
review.
To add to the listing on Discogs.
Well, I mean,
Oh, sorry, on the blog.
for my
Yeah.
blog, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like those kind of communities like Discogs.
Hmm.
And speaking of Discogs, actually, I wanted to mention to you, I don't know if you're aware of this, but um, on Discogs, there is, I suppose this is a mistake because this is like 14 years before any other records of you on recordings. According to Discogs, you provide percussion on a 1980 gospel album, Trust Me by Kevin and Nancy. Are you aware of this?
No kidding. Well, my name is very, very, very generic. So what are you going to do? When I go somewhere and they look me up in a database, it's always like, are you this one? No. Are you this one? I'm like maybe four or five down that I'm that one, because of my name.
Yeah. I mean, I find like Toms are everywhere, but not so many
Yeah,
Tom Osmonds. So I
there you
do
go.
separate myself a little bit that way.
Uh-huh.
So how active are you with the blog these days?
I try to post on it every week. Um, I've been very busy with the record, actually, the new Drugs of Faith record. And so I've been neglecting it a lot. But the record's coming out. Well, actually, our PR guy, Ear Split.
Yep.
He just gave me another assignment, for promoting the record. So I'm still busy with it. But yeah, I mean, I've got CDs to review. I don't have any interviews that I can put up. I should do that. There's always something I could be doing to back up all the stuff that I put on there.
Yeah.
Because I just put it up, but if my website crashed, I don't really have good records of what it is.
Mm.
So I've been trying to go through it all and make sure I capture all the text, and have it filed on the hard drive.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, kind of a little bit different, but a similar case. I was relatively good with backing up interviews that I do. And then
Mhm.
I had the occasion where I had 3 interviews I'd done and I hadn't backed them up. And then my laptop, which was giving me indications over time that it's like it's getting hotter, it's like doing weird things. And then one day it just died and I lost 3 interviews. I managed to redo 2 of them. But it was a bit of a lesson of like, don't ever get complacent. You need to
Yeah,
back stuff up.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I used to have all my tapes, back when I used to tape interviews.
Mm.
And I used to keep all of my my letters, when I would do interviews through the mail, but I didn't keep any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because on the other hand, it's like, like I think about this with audio recordings and I imagine like, oh, I could have everything on, just like shelves worth of cassettes. And then I
Yeah,
think, but then would I ever do anything with them or would they just become clutter?
it's clutter, but I guess, well, this will never happen. But it's just that, if somebody tries to sue you and say, I never said that, you can go to the tape and say you did say it. But I don't have the tapes anymore in my case.
Yeah.
So there was some, I don't remember what zine this was. There used to be this thing where you would get an interview in the mail and they would say, send my questions back, because they would write out the questions on a piece of paper and mail it to you.
Yeah.
And then you would write out the answers and write them back and send them back. And maybe you would just get the answers back. So this guy ran this interview with Autopsy, and he introduced the interview by saying, well, he didn't, I asked him to send my questions back and he didn't. And I can't remember what I asked him. So he just ran the answers. That was the interview. And the guy from Autopsy is very silly too. And he hardly ever gives you a straight answer. So, I would say, number 7, no, but if you hum a few bars, I can improvise, you know.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I like that.
Yeah,
And also going back to our previous point, like I'd be very disappointed if the autopsy guys took themselves too seriously.
right, right.
So, kind of drawing things to a conclusion, we've talked about streaming services and we did allude to social media right at the very beginning of the interview. In terms of promoting what you do, how much do you use social media and how much do you kind of value it versus wishing that it wasn't a thing?
Well, it's really important as a promotional tool. I used to post things from my own account, and it was purely just to try to make people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And or I'd make some observation or something and I'd post it. And again, hopefully someone would find it amusing. But I've got a lot less interested in doing that. I haven't done it in a while. I abandoned all of my X/Twitter accounts, never going on there again. On the flip side, I joined Blue Sky for the band.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing that because, yeah, Twitter is just, I don't even know what the point is.
Yeah. So I've got 2 accounts on, the Meta platforms, one for
Yeah.
the zine and one for the band.
Okay.
So I don't have anything personal on those. So if I get around to it, I'll make a Blue Sky for my zine too, so I can. So when I put something up, that's how I promote it these days. I just hit all of the accounts that I'm still using.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds a little bit like your relationship with it is sort of similar to what I've been trying to do, which is that I just treat it as a way of trying to promote and also like, support and interact with people that I find interesting, but
Sure,
I
that
generally
too.
try and avoid just kind of like browsing mindlessly through it.
Well, that's difficult too, because as soon as you get on there, the algorithm gets you, and then 10 minutes later, I mean, you hope that it's only 10 minutes, you
Yeah.
know.
You go like, I came on this to send someone a message. Why am I scrolling through random stuff?
Yeah, it's a catch-22 because you want other people to scroll so they'll see your post.
True.
So it's just really difficult. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
I was talking in a social media thread. I was talking to somebody that I'm friends with about this. He was talking about, you know, he was using the medium to talk about how he should get off of it. And I said, well, what is everybody going to do? Go back to email marketing? You know?
Mm.
I mean, people find out about shows this way too.
Yeah.
Every time I've got a show, I make either me or whoever set the show up makes a Facebook event for it.
Mm.
So it's really difficult.
It
It's
is.
depressing.
It is. But not hopeless, I like to think.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, no, I was about to say something that would make me really depressed. I was about to say, even in the darkest times, Killing Joke released great music. And I was like, oh, fuck. That was a bad example.
Well, I'll number one, I'm glad you brought them up because I was going to compliment you on your Killing Joke LP. And number two, let's see if I can make you green with envy. So one of our vacations is we went to London only because Killing Joke played the Royal Albert Hall, and that's what we based our vacation around.
What tour was that on? Which record?
It was the last show Geordie played. They played the first two albums back to back,
That's fucking cool.
and they've done that before. They just never did it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I saw them when they just reformed with the original guys with Big Paul on drums and
Yeah,
they had Geordie and Youth. And I saw them do that at, I forget where it was. It was somewhere in London, like quite a small venue. And they did 2 nights in a row. And they did, I don't remember if they did like the whole of the first two albums, but one of them was kind of like most of those albums. And then the other ones was like loads of singles throughout the career. And it was funny because the first night was like really rowdy and I was getting chucked around a lot and I got very bruised, which was great.
yeah.
And then the second night, I recognized a lot of the same people, but it was like noticeably a little bit calmer. Like everyone had got battered and we are all like, all right, I'm just going to like relax a little bit this time round.
So like you, a lot of people went to both nights.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I even got like they did, I don't know how they managed to do it so quickly, but they burned CDRs of the shows and then like quite soon after the show was finished, they were available. So I don't know how they managed to do it so quickly.
Yeah, one time I saw Einstürzende Neubauten, and they did that, and they had a CD burner that had whatever it had like 6 drives in it, and their show was so long they had to put it on 2 CDRs. So halfway through the show, Blixa was explaining all this, and he says, "I'm just talking right now so our guy can put the next CDR in." and tape the rest of the show, and then we'll have CDRs of the show available after the gig.
Pretty
So
slick.
after the show's over, then they started burning them, I guess.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Well, talking about bands to have seen and bands to regret not seeing, I have at least seen them play once. So I can be I can be happy at least that I managed to do that.
What, Neubauten?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, again, I can't actually remember where I saw them, but I do remember one of the percussionists had this huge funnel that he walked up these stairs to, and he had these different pieces of jagged metal, and he threw them down it as part of the show. I thought that's very Neubauten.
Yeah, I don't remember that. They didn't do that when I saw them. I think I saw them like 2 tours in a row. One of them might have been Silence is Sexy,
Hmm.
and then they came around again for maybe it was the record after that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I saw them a fair bit later. I think I saw them in like 2012, something like that. But yeah, they were great. I would
They have a lot of
definitely say
stuff at
that.
their merch table. They had the shirts and the records and everything, but they had mouse pads and they had computer bags, lots of apparel. They had these really cool Neubauten shirts for little kids,
Yeah,
like a shirt that was just this big. So they put the whole front was filled up with their guy,
yeah,
whatever that symbol is.
yeah.
And then on the back it just said neubauten.org.
That's cool.
And I almost bought one because it was just so awesome. But what am I going to do with it?
Yeah, yeah. I was really impressed with them actually. I bought, the House de Liga, the one with the horse, whether it's pissing or coming on the cover, and it's got like the
I
guy
always
in the
thought he
eye.
was pissing.
I've
Just,
had this
just
conversation with lots of people, be like, is he pissing or coming? And yeah, I still haven't quite decided what I think because anyway, that's a whole tangent. But so
yeah.
I bought the t-shirt from their website and I was quite impressed when it came. It said that it was carbon neutral.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, Napalm Death has a whole thing about that. They sell shirts on their website, and they've got this long list of how ethical and green the shirt is.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I dig that. Napalm Death are great. Sorry, and I shouldn't keep you so long. I'm enjoying chatting with you,
But
but
I could talk about Napalm Death all day. So please continue.
well, my one little, I'm sure you have more Napalm Death anecdotes than I do, but the only time I've seen them play, I saw them in Prague because I used to live in Prague, and they were playing with I Hate God supporting, and I just really wanted to see I Hate God. So I literally just bought tickets and went with a couple of friends to see I Hate God, who then potentially permanently damaged my hearing because there was one moment in it where the feedback just really like a piercing needle went into my ear, and I
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
partially deafened for a few days, but it was still a great
yeah.
show. But then afterwards, it was like, oh well, Napalm Death are on, I might as well see them. And then I saw Napalm Death play, and I was like, what was wrong with me? How did I not think that Napalm Death would be incredible? They were absolutely amazing.
Uh-huh.
So I was into Napalm Death before that, but for some reason I just didn't think like, yeah, like you have to see Napalm Death live. So
Yeah,
I won't make that mistake again.
yeah. Um, they're coming around. They're doing this tour now with the Melvins and Crowbar, something like that.
Oh, that's right.
Another
Yes, I really want to catch that.
Stormtrooper Imperial March Part 3, or what, I don't know what it's called. And so they're coming to the States with that.
Yeah, that's an amazing lineup.
Yeah, the last time they came with this Imperial Stormtrooper Death March thing, but once that came to the States, and the Melvins were on that too. And Milk Banana opened up.
Yeah, I saw them. I saw them in Glasgow. That was very, very cool. They have
Yeah.
a very particular energy.
Did you see them when it was just the two of them on stage?
Yeah. And she
Right.
had the controller,
The
however the
thingy.
hell she works that out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So when you saw Napalm Death, what tour was it? Like, do you know what record they had at the time?
Um, I think it might have been before the what's it called? The Jaws of Defeatism one where they're
Yeah, the new
squeezing.
one. Yeah.
I think it was just before that because it would have been like it was just before the pandemic, so it would have been like 2019, I think.
Okay.
I picked up a 7 inch when I was there. They'd just done a cover of White Cross, I think, by Sonic
Yeah.
Youth.
Yeah. So that's from that record. Exactly.
Yeah, they were amazing. And I
Yeah.
like that record as well. I'm so impressed by the variety of it. Like it has like a track, I forget what it's called, but it's got this kind of like slave ship thing going on that's almost like Children of God era Swans. It's like I would never imagine that. But then again, like Shane Embury's been doing this amazing stuff, Dark Sky Burial.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
they're
so he's going to open all the shows that
that's right.
he's opening with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a song on there that sounds just like Killing Joke.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was a thing too that like kind of like, oh, interesting. I always like it when I notice little Killing Joke influence popping in. Like,
Yeah.
good.
One time I interviewed their old drummer, Mick Harris.
Yeah.
And you say something at the end of the interview, the band throws something in at the end, and he
Yeah.
says, the word of the year is Killing Joke. And I didn't know who they were at the time. So I said, okay, you know,
So when was that like mid 80s or something?
they were they had done Harmony Corruption
Oh, okay. So
just
like
after that record came out.
1990, 91 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was that an email or like a letter that you did with Mick Harris, or that
It
was
was over the
actually
phone.
over the phone?
Yeah.
What was that like? I've done one phone interview and that was kind of stressful.
How
Um,
so?
well, I was sort of, I don't know how you did it, but I was trying to record it and I just had a bit of a technological nightmare. Like I wasn't actually going to release it as audio. It was for a magazine,
Yeah.
but it was a little bit tricky to record. Like, how would you do that logistically when you had phone interviews?
Well, my parents had bought me this. this tape recorder that's made just for that purpose.
Ah.
So you could, how was it? You, did I have an adapter? You didn't plug the phone, it didn't have I don't think, well, I'm going by memory now. I don't think it had a slot where you could plug the receiver into it.
Mm.
So maybe I had a thing where I could plug the receiver and then it had an eighth, you know, a quarter-inch male on it, and you could plug that in there.
Mm.
So then you can tape it right off the phone line, but and then still use the receiver.
Yeah.
So it went into it went into the tape recorder and then it came out and you could be on the phone and you taped it.
Did you spend a lot of time transcribing back in the day?
Oh yeah. Play it for a second. Did I get that right? Back it up. Play it again. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I like to think that I can type quite quickly, but I definitely cannot type as fast as someone can talk.
I can, I can type faster than I can talk. If I want to, like, if I was going to try to dictate a review that I wanted to put on my blog to
Mm.
AI or something, it would be quicker if I typed it.
Yeah, interesting. You touch type?
With a keyboard.
No,
How
but
do
I
you
mean, like,
mean?
do you use all of your fingers?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't go like this.
Yeah. So when did you? Sorry, this is like I really am going to wrap things up soon, but now I'm really interested to know like how did you learn to touch type? Because I remember specifically I did it like when I was about 18 or 19. I had this computer program called Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing, and I learned to do it that way. And I'm so grateful that I did because it's just made my life so much easier. I can't imagine what it would have been like to keep living my life, maybe just like using four fingers. How did you?
Oh, yeah. There's this funny scene in was it Star Trek 4? Where they go back in time.
Is that the one where they're looking for Spock, the one with the whales?
It was one of the whales. And they sit down in front of a computer, and Scotty, do you remember this? Where he's trying to talk to the computer.
No. I remember
He's
Wrath
trying
of
to talk
Khan
to
was
the
on all.
computer because that's the only interface with a computer he ever knew was just talking to it. And of course, nothing happened. And McCoy's looking around and he goes, "Try this." And he just gives him the mouse, and he didn't know what the mouse did. So he starts talking into the mouse. And then the guy that was standing there, he doesn't know they're from the future, but he goes, "Try the keyboard," you know? And Scotty goes, "Oh, a keyboard, how quaint." And he goes like this. And he starts going like that because he doesn't know how to type, you know? Anyway, uh, we had a PC back in the day at home.
Mm,
This was again in the early 90s. And it had this, the typing program, so you could write documents and all that was we had WordStar
hmm
and then WordPerfect. And so he got this program on a floppy disk called Typing Tutor, So I learned how to type using that. And it had a game called Letter Invaders.
mm.
So the letters would come down like Space Invaders. So
Yep.
you had to watch the screen and if a J was coming down, you had to hit the J so the missile would destroy it before it came to the bottom. So
Yeah,
that
that
was
was that was very much like what I had. You'd do these exercises and then it would give you games with the letters that you'd learn to play and you'd
okay.
have to like I guess it's like kind of a Guitar Hero kind of thing. Like these days, you've got to time it for the correct letters and gradually you build it up. Right, Richard, I'm not going to keep digressing. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you so
It was
much.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Before we finish, just to to recap, so the album's coming out on CD through Selfmadegod, and people can get that through Bandcamp. And
They can also go to the Self-Made God website, order from that.
and if they want to get the vinyl,
Then they can go to the Malokul Bandcamp, and then he has a Big Cartel,
right?
another web store.
And
If it's,
so,
I think he's got, yeah, I guess it's a Big Cartel now.
and if people want to have the digital download that comes with the PDF, they can go to either site.
The
Is that right?
PDF one specifically, that'll be at the Drugs of Faith Bandcamp.
Oh, you'll
I'm
have that
gonna
on
wait
your own
until,
Bandcamp.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna wait till the record comes out and then I'll put it up on there, like the next day.
Yeah.
So people can, at first they can go to the labels,
Yeah.
and it'll be on Spotify and Apple Music, just to tie that knot about the socials and the streaming.
Yep. Exactly. Just to cover all the bases.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Good to talk to you. Nice to see you over the phone lines.
Yeah. Great to talk in person. Well,
Yeah.
in real time.
In real time. Yeah, definitely.
Don't perceive the rise